Okay, so basically the 2.0 release has a major feature, one major feature and a few minor ones. The major feature is that we integrated the form builder into Action Grid. And the form builder is basically we integrated a large part of Action Form. And it's the same code base as Action Form, so we've been able to keep most of the features. So features like binding expression or conditions, all the fields, the drop-downs, the data sources for the drop-downs, all of this we were able to just reuse from Action Form. Next, we implemented Evoke compatibility. So this is in line with the rest of our modules. So we are working with the stuff from DNN store to make our modules Evoke compatible. And we've already have 3 or 4 modules listed and we'll continue with the rest. So I think most of them will be compatible, except maybe a few that there will be a conflict of interest with Evoke. Next, other features, we worked around the SQL data sources, especially for store procedure. We're still not there with the SQL data source. So I think in one of the feature lists we'll have to rewrite the entire SQL layer to take advantage of the Lucene storage that we have. So right now SQL data stores are not cached, while Action Form is cached in Lucene index, which makes it very, very fast. And we plan to do the same migration with SQL, but still we did a lot of work around allowing SQL data sources to connect to different databases, to non-SQL databases. And we've tried to make store procedure compatible with our SQL data source. The problem with SQL is that we are running directly against the database, so whenever we need to do like an ordering or a filtering, we have to somehow alter the query that was provided in the data source, and that is a bit difficult because not all structures can be, let's say, wrapped around the statement to produce a filter query or a filter result set or an order result set. That won't be a problem in a future release. We'll cache this SQL data. Other work we did around the buttons. We added permissions for the buttons. So you could say this button is visible to this role. And then we also added pop-ups. Previously only the Action Form supported pop-ups. So when you edited an entry, a pop-up would open with the form. You'd provide that data, submit the form, and the grid would update. Now what we did, we provided this functionality to all data sources to open in pop-up, including for the edit and for the view buttons. And then we did more work for allowing HTML in columns and in computed fields, because the problem with HTML is that it's not trusted by default, because in some cases that data is not provided from a trusted source, like for example a contact form. There will be a user submitting the form. That content is not trusted by default, so there is an option to allow HTML for each column that solves this problem. And then we did something very interesting, which is to allow access to query string, post, cookies, variables using dollar notation. So right now there are special tokens to access the query string. In Action Form we built a query string token, but for the rest of our modules my tokens is required. But now what we did in Action Grid, all variables from query string, post, and cookies become tokens that begin with a $sign. So if you have an ID in query string, you just write between square brackets $sign ID, and you'll be able to access that variable. So we plan to extend this mechanism to all our modules because it makes it very simple to develop applications, and you don't depend on outside sources. These are the big features, and actually the form builder was the one single feature that took 4 or 5 months to implement. And I will go now to a demo. I want to show you how we can build a simple application using Action Grid, Action Form, and the new form builder piece that we've implemented. I will switch to a demo site that I have. And I will start with a clean page. And the purpose today, let's build a simple leads application where we capture a list of names with emails, and then we maintain a status from Action Grid, and then perhaps also implement a feature to bulk email those contacts, but send them a customized email at the same time. Okay, so let's create a grid module. And also I'll create an action form module for data entry. I've already created a table. It's called leads, and it looks like this. Let me create it again to make sure. Okay, so now I have a leads table, and what I will do is I will configure action form to insert data into that table, and then action grid to display it and manage it. So I will start, I'll create a simple form with a name and an email. That's all I need. Name, email, and then a submit button that will have a SQL action to populate this table. Actually, I have the SQL here. So I will set into the leads table the name, the email, and the status. It will be new. Okay. So now I will submit a test entry. So I can actually test my grid. And now we move on to the fun stuff where I show you the new functionalities from Action Grid, especially the form builder. But before that, let's select the data source, the action form module that we've just created. Next, we need to add the fields that we want to display. And actually, maybe we don't want to connect to action form. Sorry, maybe we want to connect to the database table. Because right now we are inserting and retrieving data directly from the database. So now I should also have the status here. Okay. So what I have so far is basic Action Grid functionality. So I have a grid that just displays data from a table, and I can search, filter that data. Right now I only have one entry, which is John, that I've submitted. And now the interesting part is that I can add a form, and a form which, let's say, has a drop-down. That is the status. So I can change the status directly from the grid. And notice that we have this new button here called Add Form. And this opens up a minimum set of features from action form. So we have the label align and field spacing from general settings from action form, but we don't have many other settings that either are not relevant to the scope or we wanted to keep it simple at this point. But then we have all the form fields functionality. So we could add a drop-down. And again, we have layout view. So same as action form, you can build complex forms. You can resize and, for example, put 2 columns and things like that. And then I'll name this column status, but it's not really correct because I already have a field name status, which is a column name. So one important thing that I want to point out is that the form fields will be turned out into tokens, same as the grid fields. So if I have a grid field name status, the risk is that there will be conflicts if I name form fields same as status. So maybe I can change this to something else, like status picker. Yeah. So now I have a different name and they will not conflict. Okay. So now I could set an initial value. And I could set the status first, let's say new, contacted, and converted. And then I could put an initial value, and here I can use token. So I can use the status token, which comes from the grid. So I'll set the initial value of the drawdown to new, which is for John, or to different values for different users. So let's see what we have so far. So right now we have a new column, which is the form. And here we have a dropdown. Yeah. So using this form will also be possible to build like inline editing. But inline editing is a different story that I plan to tell you a bit about at the end of this webinar. Because it will be a bit difficult to do inline editing like this, to have so many form fields in a grid. Okay, so right now what we have this drop down, but the purpose is that we need to change the status and then click a button to update. So next thing for us is to add that button. We add an item button, which is a button that appears for each row. And here, let's say update. We'll add an action to update leads, set status equals with status picker, and this is a string where ID equals ID. So notice how I have here both grid tokens that come from the data source, so from the table like ID, but also tokens that come from the form. So let's see how this feels. So right now I can change the status to contacted, click update, and let's refresh the page to confirm that the status now says to contacted. Yeah, so now the status is contacted, but one little flaw that I saw when I click, for example, converted, the drop-down status changed, but this other status doesn't change. So perhaps one little adjustment that I can do here is to add another action that is called data source refresh, which will tell the grid to get the data again from the server. Okay. So one question is if we could retrieve the drop-down values from the database. Of course we can. I will show you that in a moment. Right now I'm changing the status, clicking update, and you see this time the status also updated because I issued the database refresh action. Now if I wanted to populate the drop-down from the server, this is a feature that we've migrated from Action Form. So basically you can write a SQL query here, select status, let's say from status is stable, and I think actually select, it will be provided here in the description. You can also add a SQL statement here. And I think the first one, I'm not sure why it doesn't say here in the comment. The first one would be the text and the second one would be the value, like ID and status name. So you can do SQL query here. But this is a feature that will be changed very soon. It's already underway. So basically the SQL will be a data source here. So you select SQL data source from here, and then you write the SQL in one of the new parameters that appear. So basically you will not write the SQL directly in here. That is because each data source will also have parameters, like the SQL data source will have two parameters, one for SQL query and another one for the connection string. So it will be possible to retrieve data from other databases as well. So now what we could do is we could also hide this column, either delete it or hide it, because we already have a status column. This is redundant. And also note that you have the ability to add multiple forms. Now if I add two forms with the same name, it will complain. The name is not really used for much, but it needs to be different to avoid some conflicts in code. And there will be a warning that there are duplicate IDs. But one thing that you have to keep in mind is that the form field IDs should be unique between all forms and the grid fields. Otherwise there will be conflicts, because on submit you saw that all the tokens from all forms and grid were created in the same space, so to speak. Okay, so one comment is that if we hide the main column, which is the status column, there will be no way to sort by that column. Yes, this is correct. There are ways in which you could still sort by, for example, appending some variables to the query string. But yes, you are right, there is no built-in way to still sort after you've hidden that column. So we don't have a solution for that yet, except that in a future release we'll have better documented the parameters in the URL. So every time that you apply a filter, it will reflect in the URL. So you can also bookmark filtered grids, and then if you pass a link that has those parameters, the receiving party will see the same data. And then you could, it will be both ways. That is, if you append something to that query string, a parameter, the grid will update automatically to reflect those changes. Like sorting and filtering will all be in that string. So when you use multiple forms, because if they all live in the same space, it only makes sense to use multiple forms for displaying purposes. Like you want to display fields in different parts of the grid, like let's say first column should be text box and then some grid columns, and then at the end you want a drop-down. Then you need two forms to group them together. Otherwise, one form would be enough. And note that this also works with the listing template. So let's take a look at the listing template. So it will be the same. We have the name, and then we can change the status from here. Yeah. So now let's look at the part of doing bulk updates. So let's say that we want to update, to change. We have multiple contacts, and I will add a few more. And then we want to select multiple columns and maybe change all the statuses or send a bulk email, for example. So we'll add a grid button. Let's call it bulk update. And we can have him require selection, so only when items are selected it will appear. And I will explain to you in a bit. I want to tell you something important. And then for each selected item we can add the action to update it, and it will be the same query. So in this for each selected item, these actions will be executed for each item in the list. So each time this action executes, it will have specific values for ID and status speaker. So now let's move on to the front end and tell you the bit that I wanted to point out. And that is currently only selected data is available in the bulk actions. So if something is not selected, and this selected means that is you see orange in this case, only then will this data get to the server. So for example, if let's change this to new, but I leave this one to say converted. When I bulk update, only the first two should be updated. Yeah, actually, I think there is a problem here with this template. I don't see the values being maintained. Let me check out if it's template related or is something else. So I'll switch back to the grid template. So I think something happened here, but I'm not. Oh, I think yes. What happened is that because I removed that field, yes, definitely, because I removed the status field, this token no longer exists. So this initial value no longer exists. So that would be the problem. This one. So actually, I shouldn't have deleted it. I should just make it hidden. So let's just make it hidden on all devices. Okay, so now we are back. So like I was saying, if I select only these two, and then this one, even if I change when I bulk update, only the first two should speak because they were selected. And this is a bit complicated right now because it's not intuitive that you have to select them. So one change that we'll do very shortly. So you see these two are the first two are contacted, but the third one didn't update. So one thing that we'll do is that every time that you change something, the field automatically becomes selected. And if you unselect it, it cancels all the modifications. So this way it will be reflected that a field had changes. One question that I have here says I can add tokens to the form fields in grid, but there is no way to hide the column header from the grid. Is there a way around it? The column header, you mean probably this title here. I think, let's take a look if we can just leave it empty. I don't know if this will cause problems. Yeah, I see it didn't cause any problem, so you can leave it empty, I guess. One question is bug with ActionGrid 2.0 added on Sharplook page resolves. Yes, I know that bug. I will have to check out. I'm not sure yet if it's resolved, but if it's not, it will probably be tomorrow. So I see a lot of familiar people here, familiar faces, and I think there is no problem answering questions not relating to this demo. So I'm here to ask all questions. So let me also show you how we could build a bulk email. So it will be the same thing like bulk update. Let's say send a reminder. We want to send them a reminder about something, and then we would use the email. Sorry, no, not here. In the for each selected item, send email, and then I could say from me to, and here I can start using tokens from this field to the email, and then here I could use again tokens. So just select a few rows, pick an action, and then maybe also in the same set, we could do the update query to update the status to contacted, because we just send them emails, so that they will be contacted at this stage. So you see this form builder piece is very powerful, and it opens up new possibilities. And I think the basic scenario that we had in mind when we developed this was to have like a product listing where you'd have quantities and options for each product in the list, and then you'd select multiple items, give them different options, and then add them to a cart, to a server-side cart. And then for each selected item, we would insert an entry in the cart and then maybe refresh the page or the grid. Yes, and of course we use the listing template, which is much better choice for a product listing. And I've also seen recently I saw an increasing number of customers starting to create their own templates, because the templates that you see here are actually AngularJS and HTML templates, so they are much easy to work with than XSL, Razor, or other such technologies. So now another question, and this take me to the next thing that I wanted to show you. Is there a way to filter the grids based on query string parameters and have the ability to reset these filters? Yes, I think some of this is achievable, and this takes me to the next item in the list, which is the dollar prefix tokens. So basically, let's rewrite this database data source, change this to a SQL query, so we can apply the filter. So let's say select all from leads, and we could put a condition where, let's say, email like, and here we can grab a value from query string. Let's say lookup, yeah. Or we can look up in all fields, in email and in name, and the primary column is ID, and I think this might throw an error. Let's see. No, it actually worked. And now I still have 3 fields, but because lookup is empty. But let's put something like Mike. Yeah, now we only have Mike. To clear up this query string, you could put a button, and we can do that, to redirect to the same page. So when we redirect to the same page, the page will reload, and then the filters, the query string will be gone. Clear filters, and we can also again use the condition field to put a lookup not empty. So only when lookup is not empty we will display this button. And here these are the roles that I told you about. So basically now you can say that this button is visible to these roles. This was previously possible through the condition field and my tokens. So there is a token called has role, for example administrators, and this will evaluate to true when the user has this role and to false otherwise. But this requires my tokens to work, and also requires that you know and how to write and where to write the syntax. These checkboxes are much easier to use for this for the simple scenario of targeting different buttons for different roles. So yeah, so right now I'm checking if lookup is not empty. This button will display, and then we can add an action to redirect to URL or to portal page, and we can select the same page, grid to 0, and not keep any query string. So the query string will be lost, and implicitly the filters will be lost. Yeah. So now when I go back, I don't have any lookup, so I shouldn't see that button. But for some reason I see it. Okay, I will look into this. But then when we have something here, and hit clear filters, then you see the value from query string is gone, and the page will refresh and the filters will be gone. So I think this way you can achieve it. But like I said previously, we plan to make something much nicer and use different mechanisms so the page doesn't refresh between filters. So for older browsers, we'll use the fragments, the URL fragments, and for new browser, there is actually an API to change the URL without loading the page. So, and it will be both ways. So from an external component, you can just append to something to the URL. Action Grid will pick it up and refresh the grid. So we have that on our list. So another question, has the syntax lookup equals nothing has been removed for 2.0 in the SQL data source query? No, I just did that. If you so I just use like lookup. So I just use that, so it hasn't been removed. It's there. I'm not sure why this didn't work on the button. Let me see if I spot any mistake. Lookup not equals empty string. Okay, not sure what's going on here. I will take a note and look into this. Okay. Let me take a fresh look at the highlights to see if there is more I should cover. I guess I don't know if I showed you the allow HTML option. One suggestion is that I would try different. I think this is C# syntax, so I'm not sure this would work. Maybe it's none. No, actually, also I get an error. Now I will look into this. It appears that it will be maybe a bug. I don't know why it's not available. Maybe the condition is not applied to this button. So maybe that's the problem. So let me show you a bit the HTML piece. Actually, it has been around for a while, so I'm sure most of you already know it. So basically, for every field, there is a allow HTML option. It's turned off by default, like I told you, but you can turn it on for fields or also for computed fields. So if you have a computed field where you can use multiple variables, you could say that HTML is allowed and put the name in bold. So the result that is the name will be in bold, but if we take out that option, we would actually see the HTML tags instead of the bold text. Okay, so right now we see Mike in bold. So I think if you trust the content, you can use this option. But if you do not trust it, it would be risky because people could inject all sorts of data like scripts into the HTML. And also other formatting, they could break your page formatting, for example, not closing tags and stuff like that. So one more feature that I can show you is the pop-up for the data sources. This one, it's basically on the special buttons, like also we added on view buttons, and then you can have them open in a pop-up. But for this we need to define an URL for the view. So we could use, I don't think it, I don't really have a view URL, so I just use the homepage here. And of course you can use token here, like as the ID of the row being viewed. Okay, so they will open in a pop-up. Besides this, I think we had lots of minor adjustments, and we had a lot of minor adjustment and bug fixing, but I didn't include this in my presentation. But there is a log on our website, and you can go through it and check many of these fixes. So this was a very long release cycle, and we collected quite a few items in the changelog. So I think this is all I wanted to cover. Let me see if I have other questions here. One question is that 2.0 is that one question I get a lot of on 2.0 is the order by clause in the SQL Select. Will this be possible? Order by clause in SQL Select. Why wouldn't that work? I think that would not work for sort procedure, for example, if I'm not mistaken. Because for SQL queries, I think it's wrapped in a common table expression, and then on top of that, it applies filters and sorting, but it's not possible for a stored procedure, because you cannot wrap a stored procedure in a CTE. Okay, so I'm not sure if that I understand this question. I think I saw it on the forum, but I'm not familiar with it. So you say that there is a problem now upgrading sorting by, for example, I want to sort by name. John, Mike, Ryan, Mike, John. So I see this works. You said that there is a problem by when you put an order by in the query. Order by email, okay. By order by, okay, I think I start to understand what happens now. I think it can't be wrapped in the CTE. The order by can't be wrapped in the CTE. I think that is the problem. So let's see. Name. Yeah, I see still works for me. So maybe I didn't save. Let me check again. Order by email. Yeah, so I see it works for me. So right now I have John, Mike, Ryan. Click name, and now I have Ryan, Mike, John. So it appears to work. I think it's because of how the query is structured. Maybe it's a complex query, or maybe if it's a stored procedure, I know that it will not work. There will be problems. But yeah, we can look more on this on forum. Let me take a few more questions. I see one question. Says, is it possible to display images or map in Action Grid 2.0? Yes, you can use the computed column. I just show you that. So you can, in the computed column, you can input HTML, and in that HTML you can also reference tokens. So let's see. We can create something like let's say avatar, and this would display an image. Of course, I don't have an avatar column, but if I had one, it will display an image. Okay, so let me get back to more questions. Is there any way to have upgrades to actually not break regular DNS search and evoke content by overwriting within DLL with a different version? Yes, we've already fixed that. So right now what we do is we put, I think I also have it here, we put our copy of the DLL. I don't have it here, but basically we put our copy of the DLL, we put it in a subfolder in bin, so it doesn't overwrite that file. So we put it in this subfolder, and then in web config we say that if it's this version, you should take it from this location. So this has already been fixed, and I think it's been fixed today. You can write to our support address or on the forum, and somebody will send you the new build. Another question is, looks like showing form fields in grid based on tokens does not seem to be working. Showing form fields in grid based on tokens. Let's check out this. So let's say that we want to show status only if it's not closed. So for this we'd use the form. This one is the form, and we put a condition saying status not equal converted. So for converted clients, we no longer want to change the status. I think I have a typing here. Status. Okay, so let's change this one to converted. I wonder what happened here. Oh, I have an extra HTTP here. I don't know how that got in here. Okay, so I think you are correct. And I did notice also in the buttons, so I think there might be a problem. So I'll check the conditions for all for everything, because it didn't work on the buttons. So I think maybe there is a bigger problem. Yeah, so I will look into this problem. I think if you can also write to support or open a ticket on our forum, it will be easier to follow up with you on this and provide resolution. Okay, so let's move on. We have a stored procedure. Yeah, so if you have a stored procedure, it says that somebody says that Action Grid will call it 3 times. I think this used to be the case because I remember we fixed this. There was a token that we removed. There was a token that would get the total number of results or something like that. And that token, to get the total number of results, would run a query. And that would be one extra queries, but we did remove those tokens. So I think I will check if this is still a problem, but I remember explicitly fixing this extra request. So I will check it on last build also, but again, if you can post on our forums, it will be easier to follow up with you on this. Let me move to the last slide. I made a compilation of the top feature requests on our forums, and I think inline editing is the first one we'll start working on. So that is the capability to turn the entire grid into an Excel-like format to input data that save at once. That will be the next major piece of development for Action Grid. And that will also imply that the data sources will no longer be read-only. So we also have an ability to write to the data source because we need to bulk update. Or if we don't make the data source writable, we at least provide a way to write a list of queries for what happens on editing. So for each edited row, you could update it via web services or a SQL query or something else. But I think inline editing should be directly against the data source. We're still working on how this should work, but it will probably be the next major development for Action Grid. We also have another one that has been long around, that is the conditions for the buttons do not apply for each row, so you cannot use row tokens. So you cannot have like a row that that each row has different buttons. They all must have same buttons, and that is how the front-end component was designed. It only receives the buttons once. So I guess we will need to implement a mechanism to send the buttons for each row, or just send it for each row if they have conditions on them. So that is also a popular request. We also got a request for Excel import. I think this will tie nicely with making the data sources writable, because then the Excel import will just write to the data source. And I think we had a few more that we discussed that I mentioned in this call, but okay, another question, is there any sort of PDF output? Well, if you watch the DNN store, maybe you noticed that we just released PDF Generator 2.0 yesterday, I think. And the major change is that we made it work with all action-based modules. So up until now, it only worked with action form. So let's see the new modules. DNN PDF Generator. So right now this will work with any of our modules. It will work with all these 4 modules. So you could basically make an invoicing system where you have a client's grid, select 5 clients and click a button to send invoice or issue invoice. It will generate PDFs on this based on an HTML format. So how this works is PDF generator. You generate the HTML code using the tokens, and then the extension will convert it to PDFs. And we also have underway a new generator for Excel files. So right now we have an action to export as CSV, delimited files, but we'll have support for native Excel files. And I think that is a sponsored requirement, and it will be out, I think maybe next week, something like that. And I think after that it will be easier to implement this Excel import feature. These are the major features that are following. We will probably do lots of small features as always, based on your feedback, your feature requests on our forums. We have a constant stream of requests. I think we get I think around 40 requests a week. We'll not get to implement most of them right away, but it's important that they are on our list, because at some point they might become feasible, or they might become sponsored by somebody else. Just being there, somebody else might talk about them. But usually, at least the minor feature, we try to implement most of them, at least those ones that make sense. So let me see if there are more questions. If not, yeah, no more questions. So I think this is it for today. Thank you for your participation. Please contact us if you need upgrades, or if you need new licenses. You can contact sales@dnnshop.com. We have a team for a sales team. Otherwise, if you have questions, technical questions, feature requests, anything, just post on our forums. I know that most of the people that I see in this call are doing this, and I want to thank you for all the feedback that you give us. I think it's every time that we get feedback like our modules are so good. I also feel the need to thank a lot of customers that constantly get involved, provide feedback, ask for features, sponsor features, even if the feedback sometimes is negative. I think that's the nature of software development and the nature of making so many changes. But our strategy right now is we are working on unit testing and automated testing. So because we are doing so much changes, we only have 2 options here. Either we don't do so many changes to make our products more stable, or we invest more in unit testing and automated testing, and we chose to do the later. And I think that will reflect in stability of our modules in the following weeks. So I think we already seen, because we already started this, and I think the progress is visible, at least from our perspective. So I want to thank you for being there on our forum with us, and being patient with us when there are situations, bugs that take time. Anyway, so again, thank you for your participation today, and I wait for you at our next webinar, which is not scheduled yet, but it will probably be the Search Boost release. That's a major one. Okay, so a great day to you.